It's in the mid to upper 90s today. That's Fahrenheit. That's real hot. So we'll see what we're going to see with this. Armor's basically done. It still needs to be painted, whatever top paint it gets. Jumpsuit's done. Means we're on to leather work. Got a couple of neat ideas, right? I've got some things sketched up like that. I like that. You probably can't see any of that, but I can. So we're at the point where I need to decide what kind of color I want to use on this. I'm probably going to end up using, this is like 8 to 9 ounce veg tan. And I've got some, I think this is chrome tan. Let me pull you in so I can show you the design. All right. So this is the right leg flare. And I got a bunch of these flares I printed up, which I think are pretty neat. I was originally going to cast them in resin, but I'm thinking maybe I might try casting them in brass. Because I'm using a bunch of brass buttons, Sam Brown buttons, for the closure. On the Acolyte, the new Disney show showed the back of a Jedi belt and had these, which I kind of like. So I may do something similar. There's a top belt, which weaves in and out of the bottom brace belt. That's it. It's very Dinjarin. Then for the other leg, I want a couple of really thin, narrow, long pouches. I want a 1 inch, 2 inch, and a 1 inch. Because I think they'll look neat. Again, it's going to do that same ending that this side had. But of course going the other way. But that's the basic design. So step one is going to be laying everything out and deciding color. I like this pull-up, but according to the design, the top one is the one that holds everything in place. I don't know how strong that's going to be. Of course, I also don't know how much it really needs to hold things in place, because I could just leave it attached and slide my leg into it. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to lay everything out, and we'll see where we're at. So this is what I got. I've got a greenish pull-up. A pull-up just means that it's got a wax on it that changes the tint a little bit. So when things like wrinkle, the color stays a little more. They weather way better than anything else. And I've got these 3 pull-ups, and I don't think I like any of them. I don't like the wax. I mean, it would make weathering them look kind of neat, but I think I'm leaning away from the pull-ups, which leaves me just this leather, just the half height of utility. So I have enough of this utility to do both belts, or both boot things. I think we're just making the whole thing out of this. We're dyeing everything different colors, and that's where we're at. So I'm going to cut out 2 straps of 20, because I need a 3-inch overlap, and my calves are about 17. 20 by, these are 4.5 tall. So I'm starting by cutting those out. So I'm cutting this out, and I realized this may be useful information for people. I made a straight edge. I got my speed square, and I made one 90-degree angle. Since I'm going 2 at 4.5, I measured out 9 and put a mark, and then 4.5 and put a mark. Then I set my tape over on this edge at 20, lined it up with the other square, make sure I have a 4.5 and 20, everything lines up, so I made a line. I know it's hard to explain. Let me show you a little better. So I have my first straight line. Put my speed square against the edge and scored the whole thing. Then I cut this edge completely straight with a knife. Now there's a mark here at 4.5. If I put my tape at that mark, lay it flat, and then put the square, as long as this still reads 20 inches at 4.5, then I know the whole thing is square. These 2 lines are parallel, and then this line, which I've already lightly scored, is going to be straight. So all I do is go up 10, put a mark, 4.5, put a mark. I'm going at 5.5 because I'm doing off the 1. Then I know that this line should be 90 degrees, or at least pretty close to it. Then I can just connect everything. But this should be my 2 boot cuffs. Boot belts? I don't even know what to call these things. So this is the roundover I sketched. I don't necessarily have to do that size, but I want something that's close. So the problem with these is they go a full 90, so I can't quite just punch. I'm really only using these as a guide. I think this is the one I'm going with because I like that curve right there. So keeping this side up, I'm just going to tap it so it leaves a mark. And I'm angling it away from this edge. See? It's like that. So that gives me a really nice line to follow, which I will do with a very sharp utility knife. Razor blades are cheap. Change them often. I'm just going to do that on all the 8 other corners. So this neat little tool is a groover. It's got a little cutting bit, and it runs along the edge of my leather and cuts a groove. I'm going to groove the entire way around both of these pieces. And that creates this nice groove right along the edge. This is a pull tool, right? You pull. This is a beveler. And this is a push tool. And it's much harder to use. And you just push it along the edge, and it makes a nice rounded groove. Or rounded edge, I mean. It just finishes everything off. Let me show you. And do it to the all 4 sides. Right, the back side, harder to do, but it can be done. And since it's a belt that's probably going to be seen from the top, I want the top to look as nice as possible. So it only takes a couple of minutes to do, but it makes a huge difference. What we're about to do next is going to make another difference. So these are burnishers. You use them to compress the fibers on an edge, right? Just go back and forth, and it makes a really smooth edge. I hate these. That's kind of for a drill, and I hate these slightly less. Concept's the same. But it's a little quicker. I am going to wet the whole edge and then just burnish the whole thing. So, unburnished and burnished. There's a noticeable difference. So this is what it's going to look like. Not weird, it kind of kicks up a bit, but that's alright. I think I want these to start right about there. Oh yeah. So since I know I want them to start right there, I can start spacing everything out. These are 1/2 inch wide. I want a 1/2 inch space in between them all. So I have these leather clips. They are roughly 1/2 inch apart, or 1/2 inch wide. I can do some spacing like that. Let's set everything up, see how I like it. So it gives me something like that. I think I like that. I think I like that a lot, and I think that's what we're going to run with. So that I have all of this set up, I'm going to mark out all the holes. So that it gets holes all along these edges that the next leather comes over and through. So it goes under each flap. I'm not quite sure how much I need to cut yet. I'll have to do a couple of test pieces and figure out full length. But right now I'm just going to mark everything out. Right, this is what I got. Right? Up, over, under, up, over, under. And I'm just making a mark every 1/2 inch. So it is going to be much farther forward than I wanted. But that's just because I want to make sure there's enough meat to do the whole thing properly. And since this is I'm putting a clip where every little casing goes. Put one there. And then just keep going. That's it. I'm just going to repeat that. Measure over 1/2 inch, punch holes, cut some lines, measure over 1/2 inch, cut holes, punch lines. Now that I have all of this cut out, I need to figure out how thick or how long to make this strap. Easiest way, I went with 4 by the way. Easiest way I could think of to do it is just put my tape down and use it in place of the strap. This will at least get me in the ballpark. So that's what it's going to look like. without all the yellow and the numbers, but you know, gives you a rough idea. And then in the back, I want it to overlap a decent amount, 25 inches. I'll probably cut it at 26. So I cut the piece. I wet it because I was going to try and feed it through, and I did feed it through, and I'm like, oh wait, I forgot a bunch of steps. So I'm going to round the edges, put in the same stitch, or same groove. I forgot the word groove for a second. It's really hot. So I'm going to bevel the edges, put the same groove in, and then slick them in place. And that's where we're at right now. It has been beveled, burnished, grooved, and rounded. I only rounded one side because the side gets tucked under. But now we're at the stage where I need to dye things. I don't know if I'm quite ready for that. I want it to look a little worn and beat up. I'm worried about dyeing because when I dye things, it tends to dye just way too dark. But that's completely my lack of skill in dyeing. So, let's see what happens, right? I'd like to reiterate the fact that I have no idea what I am doing. But this is the light, or the piece that's going to be lightest. I've got a foam brush I'm going to tear in half as an applicator. And for the light, I'm just using tan. What a nice chestnut. That seems to be working. Do a little more. My sample piece was way darker, but I used straight dye. That's not terrible. It's like using a marker. You go over the same spot too many times, you get weird flashing. That's good. It's not perfect. I don't like this, but it gets covered. Don't forget it gets covered. All right. Now we're going to try the russet on the top. I just want some nice contrast between the two belts. I think that's the colors I'm looking for. All right. I like those two colors together. I think that's going to do exactly what I wanted. So now, since it is 8 million degrees out, I'm just going to leave it. Let it go overnight. Let everything dry. We'll deal with this in the morning. All right. Everything has... Here, a little close. Just a little. That's better. So everything has had time to dry. So I'm just slowly folding and putting each piece in. Right? I'm making sure I bend the pieces where I want them to bend. So I put this piece all the way through and make sure they give that a nice bend because I want it to fit around everything. Then grab another piece or another, and then just feed this back through. Right, now making sure I push everything together so that this part is nice and flat. I should stitch it now, but I'm not gonna. I give that a nice sharp curve, and we just keep doing that. I thread it back through, fold it nice and folded. Make sure I do a good job folding. Grab another flare, and then back through. That's gonna give us this. And then this part goes over. And then this all gets put around so it looks like that. That's not bad. All right. I'm very happy with how these are. Seem a little loose, but that's all right. I'm probably gonna, like I said, cast them in brass. And if I do, I'll drill a hole all the way through and stitch them in place so they aren't going anywhere. Had an interesting thought. So I was about to go stitch this. I think I want to do the whole thing in hardware. Like the whole thing. Let's look at this. I got a bunch of these. I guess they're Chicago screws. I think I'm going to put 2 in each of these. One here. I like that idea. I like the no stitching on this particular one. I did a test punch to find out which one fits the perfectest. This guy right here. So all I'm going to do is 2 holes, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 holes, and we'll pick back up as soon as I'm done. And that gives us this. Roughly lined up. These are still nice and snug. They're going to be turned to brass soon, I'm hoping. But that looks spectacular. It's a little warm today. Clearly. I have 2 marks. There and there. So this is where it's going to rest on the shin guard. I was trying to figure out how I want to attach it. Then it occurred to me, I have a strap right here. I can move that strap and just put a Chicago screw there. That's what I'm going to do. I have a nice long Chicago screw, so I'm going to drill a hole. I'm going to punch a hole, drill a hole, put the Chicago screw through both of them, and that should hold this completely in place, which will make everything else way easier. This isn't super critical, as it will be covered, but still, I want to get it as close as I can. Let's get everything kind of lined up. Let's see if it goes all the way through. And it does. Oh, that is perfect. There's just enough room if I feel like putting foam down, that I can put foam down. Now it's all attached. Just wrap around the leg. That is pretty neat. So I still need to do the strap here. Just folded this over, lined it up about where I think it should be, and did a mark. Put 2 marks, 1 on each side. I'm gonna punch 2 small holes and feed 2 more of these through. So for this, I just rounded the edge, and I beveled both sides, but didn't bevel the round part, because I kind of like the harsh edge. I just want to make sure everything fits, because I can pop this off since I'm just using Chicago screws. Sand brown buttons. I have no idea why the thing just stopped recording, and I have no idea how much you got. But we just punched a hole, and I put a little relief cut in, because I want it to be extremely snug when it pops on. That looks perfect. Look at that. That looks fantastic. I want to put a hole right here, and then every 1/2 inch, I want to do 4 holes. I'm going to do that 4 more times every 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch, what was I thinking? I don't even know what I was thinking on that one. I put holes every 1 inch. Looks like a belt. I also punched a hole where these overlapped. It's a much smaller hole because it only has to fit the bolt for the end of the sand brown button. Alright, so now we'll slide that in, lock it down, and that is completed. A little bit of wear I need to add, a little bit of weathering, but for the most part, man, that looks good. I am happy with that. I haven't quite decided whether I'm just going to add a little reinforcing tab on the back and put these through the jumpsuit as well, so they're permanently on the jumpsuit. I haven't decided. We'll figure that out. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. This one is now done. On to the next. So that was the hard part, by the way. Getting everything, deciding how it's going to look. The other one's going to be much easier because it's just a couple of pouches. There's no real weaving. There's a little weaving, but just not enough. Not enough to worry about. This is the shape the belt pouches make. It's kind of weird, right? But I want it all to curve together into... This one's too short. I have to decide whether I'm cutting a piece and putting it on it or cutting the whole thing back out. But it makes this cool little sausage looking belt pouch flap over kind of like that. I've got a 2 1-inch and then a 2-inch. So I want 1 inch, 2 inch, 1 inch. The first thing I want to do is I want to punch a hole. Let me show you. I've got everything cut out exactly how I want it, but I want this one to be a mirror of this one. So I'll have to measure down to here, punch my 2 holes, and then measure everything out. But I'm gonna start by punching those 2 holes right there, or the 2 holes in the line. So everything lines up pretty okay. I got all the holes punched except for the stuff that goes, except for these. And they get covered anyway. I'm gonna take this off. I'm dyeing them the same colors. So this is gonna be this orangish, and then this is gonna be the brown, and these are also going to be the brown. So I'm gonna do the same dyeing technique, a little bit of water. Yeah, and that's about it. I'm gonna dilute my dyes. I'm probably gonna end up pulling out more dye than I did last time. Now we're going to leave it for a little bit. Just leave it and walk away. Everything is at time to dry. We're now going to wet form them. We're going to wet form them one at a time. Which means I'm just going to soak it in water for a couple of seconds. Just enough to get everything, you know, fully shaped. Or fully the color changes when you get leather wet. We're going to start with a little one. Going to get it wet, and then we're going to hit it with a hammer to bend it in shape. I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. I have a smooth hammer for this, by the way. A rubber mallet would probably be better, but yeah. So I have all of these extra tabs that lets me know exactly where I need to fold things. And that's kind of all I'm doing is I'm just going to fold it and then hit it with a hammer. That kind of helps it stay in shape a bit better. I don't want these super crisp. I do want them slightly rounded. So at this point, I could just, you know, make a core, wrap the whole thing up, get it very wet, and then wet form it. But I don't want it that crisp. I want it slightly beaten, slightly weathered. And this is going to do a good job of that. Just anywhere that it overlaps, hit it with a hammer a couple of times. And that gives us a cool little pouch that will serve absolutely no purpose. I'm going to round the edge here and then do the same thing with the bigger one. Alright, check that out. That's pretty neat. I mean, it's just all loosely set in place to get an idea. But that's I like that. So now, not that you can see it, but there's a mark right here, here, and here. Each one of these is getting a each one's getting a brass Chicago screw. I went with 2 on the very bottom, so I can just put this one together and cut it right there, and then put the other flap on top and still not have to recut this one. This one gets 2 on the bottom, 2 in the middle, and 2 on the top. For this, I'm just going to drill and then fight to put the Chicago screws in. It's super, the narrow tube is not good for Chicago screws. They're real hard to put together, but I want it to look a certain way, so that's what I got to do. Drill hole, Chicago screw. Then we're gonna thread everything together and see where we're at. Once everything was said and done, check these out. Right, I had to use brass ones because it's the only ones that fit. But look at that. That's gonna look neat. Next step, I've got this marked out about the same length as this one is. So I'm going to punch 2 holes and then put in 2 of the darker studs, just like I did on these. And then I'm going to curve it and then do the same thing on this side. Oh my. Look at that. That. All right. I have to trim the underbelt and then put on the rivet, and then these 2 rivets. I wanted to let it sit curved for a bit, because 2 curved leather pieces are not necessarily the same length. So now that it's had a little bit to relax, yeah, put in the 2 rivets, put in the same brown button, trim. Then we're going to put a hole through here and be done. So ultimately, this is where we're at with the first one. I put the brass one in. Kind of like that. I'm going to cast more of them. Not overtly fond of how these turned out. Just the first one anyway. First mold rarely comes out. Look at that. That is fantastic. And the second one, I love just as much. Oh, that is just super neat. That is going to look amazing on this costume. So those are done. Like done. As far as how they're going to attach to the costume, I'm probably just going to put Velcro down. But speaking of the costume, he's a little low. He's sank. I don't feel like fixing it. At least face the camera. But as far as the rest of the costume goes, all that's really left is the main belt and then whatever paint job I decide to do on him. So it's really only 2 videos left, I hope. Unless something weird pops up. Like stuff like the little brass tubes or the little brass boot flares. That'll probably be a members video. I've got a couple other things I need to cast soon. So I'm going to clear off my bench. And I hope I'll see you next time.